Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Sinister Story Hour, a podcast brought to you by the Western Skies Podcast Network. Here we discuss a new case each week. We talk about crime, cults, conspiracies, and all things sinister. If you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Sinister Story Hour and on Twitter at Sinister Hour. You can also help support the show for as little as 99 cents per month. As always, thank you for listening, and let's jump in. Hey guys, have you thought about making your own podcast, but you're not really sure where to start? That's how I was at first, and really the only choice that stood out to me was Anchor. And let me tell you why. It was completely free to start, and it has all the tools that allow me to record and edit my podcast right from my phone or computer. And they distribute the podcast for me, so it's heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. There's no minimum listenership, and you can start making money from day one. And really everything you need to make your podcast is all in one place. I love it, and I know you will too. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sinister Story Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've never joined me before and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. And if you have joined me before and you are tuning in again, thank you so much and welcome back. We had our 15th country join us this week. So we now have 15 countries that have listened to the show, and that is amazing. So thank you, Bangladesh, for being the 15th country to join us here on the Sinister Story Hour. So tonight we are going to talk about Ouija boards. There are a few things that are considered to be more sinister than a Ouija board. Ouija boards, or talking spirit boards, have actually been around since the late 1800s. It's really not clear who actually made them first, but most likely it wasn't invented by the spiritualists who people were consulting back then so much. They were actually businessmen that had originally made them and saw the opportunity to market them. The Kinnard Novelty Company saw that opportunity and they quickly jumped on it in order to first produce this talking board. Now, we talked about this in a previous episode, but up until then, spiritualism was extremely common. People were using seances at pretty much any party that was being used in the White House. We talked about that and how during the Depression and Civil War era and things like that, the circumstances were so grim that people were just desperate to seek hope, either by talking to loved ones who were on the other side or maybe talking to a spiritualist about what was to come in the future. And they were really just trying to communicate and find that hope. And up until then, nobody had really come up with a way to capitalize on this yet. Surprising, right? Because you would think that would have been the first thing that would have happened. But the Fox sisters came along and they proclaimed that they were speaking with people's loved ones who had passed to the other side, and they were kind of helping to communicate with those loved ones. But the process that they used was more of a very slow process, listening for knocks and table turning, they called it, and different things that were being used back then to communicate with the dead. Now, what the Ouija board allowed, or the talking board allowed, was just a much faster response. So really, if you think about it, the Fox sisters came along and really inspired a lot of this craze. The talking board, when it first came out, cost around $150 for each board. And even during the Depression, these things were selling like hotcakes. They could not keep them in department stores. So it really made it a hot commodity because of all of the grim circumstances that were going on. And if you think about it, today we're in much of a similar place. People are kind of clinging to things for hope, and we're seeing people kind of turn to different things for hope. And back then, we didn't have the internet, so this is what they were turning to. Now, Nobody really knows how the Ouija board got its name. There are various accounts of why it would have been named the Ouija board. One of them is that it's the words yes in French and German, oui and ja, and that's why it is named the Ouija board. Others say that it is actually a favorite author at the time, and her name was Ouida, but they had misunderstood and named it after her, and that was how it got its name. Others have a more sinister story behind it, and they say that they had actually given the Ouija board the opportunity to name itself, and it spelled out the letters, and that when they asked what that meant, it simply spelled out immediately the words good luck. So it depends on what theory you go by. I don't know what the actual theory is, but that became the name, and since then the marketing has just skyrocketed, and it seems like they've always had a market for the Ouija board.
Hello, folk music fans. Gordon Lightfoot is one of the greatest folk rock artists ever, and now there's a podcast celebrating and discussing his work song by song. It's called Carefree Highway Revisited, and every episode, your host, that's me, Mike Messner, will examine one of Gordon's songs with the help of a special guest. So, if that's your cup of tea, why don't you follow us on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or TuneIn? That's Carefree Highway Revisited.
The Ouija board was never, like I said, considered to be something sinister. Back then, it was just another portal to talk to the dead, and it was very commonplace, like I said, to do so. So, how did it get a sinister reputation? Well, it wasn't until 1973 that actually happened, and the movie The Exorcist helps us to kind of give that sinister turn to the Ouija board. Now, in The Exorcist, you might remember that our main character, Reagan, contacts through the Ouija board a demon, and that demon's name is Pazuzu. Now, Pazuzu or Zozo, Zaza or Zo, those are all names that he can be known by, has supposedly been around for hundreds of years. He is one of the most prominent demons that you can contact via the board. Now, it's not really the only place that they say that you can come into contact with him, but it is one of the most common portals said to put people in contact with Pazuzu. Some people claim that they've actually come into contact with him via automatic writing, EVPs, hypnosis. We've seen movies and books and all kinds of things about Pazuzu. Nobody really knows what Pazuzu looks like or what type of shape he takes on, but if you Google him, it's very terrifying, and if he looks anything like those images, it is really horrifying. He's often depicted as a combination of an animal and human parts. So he'll either have the head of a lion or a dog, the body of a man, talons of an eagle, 2 pairs of wings, the tail of a scorpion, and a serpentine penis. Now, just picture that. It's horrifying. So definitely don't Google is what I'm going to recommend. I didn't get anything out of Googling it other than being terrified, really. So in mythology, he was actually not thought to be super evil. He did have an evil persona, but he was also believed to have the power to frighten away other evil spirits. So he's known in mythology as the demon of the southwest wind, and he's also known to bring either during the drought season more wind, or he will bring locusts during the rainy season. He is, like I said, thought to be an evil spirit, but wards off other evil spirits. He was particularly powerful in protecting pregnant women, and that is because demon goddess Lamashtu is who is his enemy. And they are both equally as powerful, but he fights against this demon goddess, and she is the one who preys on unborn and newly born babies. So he is thought to defend these and protect these babies and protect pregnant women from any harm. Now, sometimes people say that he will make his presence known through the board and that it's very common to come into contact with him through the Ouija board. And like many demons, he loves to make his presence known. And the warning signs of that are when the planchette starts moving very, very fast. He's also known to be spotted in shadows or darkness, or he may even introduce himself via the board. He might spell his name out. He's known to spell his name Z-O-Z-O and over again so that you can tell that you are speaking with Pazuzu. If you do happen to make a connection with Pazuzu, there are some steps to take to protect yourself. They say to remain calm, that demons can recognize fear, and it's said to make them stronger. So they say to always remain calm while you're dealing with one of these situations. They also say to close the session. That's one thing about Ouija boards that's very important, to open and properly close the session. So you should always move the planchette to goodbye in order to formally close the game. Saying his name is said to give him power as well, so try to avoid saying his name or speaking directly to him. And also, if necessary, they recommend to seek help from a professional in the paranormal or some sort of a religious leader. Now, obviously, the best way to not make contact with a demon is to not try to make contact, right? So a lot of people just flat out will not mess with a Ouija board because of that reason. Here are a few real life stories of things that have happened as a result of either a Ouija board being played and somebody taking it completely too far, or perhaps possession, who knows. But in 1995, a London teen, Michael McCallum, lured a younger boy, Michael Eridge, to his apartment to play with a Ouija board. When the board spelled out kill, Eridge tried to flee, but he stabbed him to death, allegedly because he believed Satan had ordered him to kill the boy. McCallum ended up accepting a manslaughter plea and serving his time in a mental hospital. Now, there are quite a few accounts of the Ouija boards ordering people to do things such as kill people or kill themselves. And I don't know whether this is true. I have no idea. And I would never say whether I believe it because I haven't lived through something that's terrifying. I have played a Ouija board quite a few times, and you could not convince me that that planchette was not moving on its own. So I completely do have had experiences where I believe that it was moving on its own. But it's hard for me to say whether I would follow the orders of a Ouija board in order to do such drastic things. There's even a story in 1930 where two women kill another woman claiming that they did it at the direction of a Ouija board. In November 2014, there were 35 students in Bolivia that were hospitalized because of trances, sweating, and rapid heartbeats after playing with the board. There are tons of stories in the US as well as other countries about possession, murders that happen, things like that, and ways that people are influenced by the talking board. Also, there are quite a few people I came across in my research that actually use the Ouija board to make life choices. So if something big is going to happen, they can actually consult the Ouija board and ask it if it's a good plan or not. And so many people actually claim to have started businesses, changed their life circumstances due to